We have two very special guests. They're helping a lot of people that have long COVID and long vax. This is Karen Kelly and also Dr. Jeffrey Mueller. He's an MD. Karen Kelly is a registered nurse. They're down in Central Florida over in the Orlando Winter Park area, and they're helping a lot of people that, again, have an injury with the jab and also have had long COVID. You can find more about them on mercymedicalandwellness.org, excuse me, mercymedicalandwellness.org. That was a handful and a mouthful, but Karen and Dr. Jeffrey, thanks so much for coming on the program. Greatly appreciate you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us. We really appreciate the time.
So you guys are doing amazing work down in the Central Florida area, helping, again, as we just stated, a lot of people that are struggling with long COVID and long vax. Can we just start off a little bit and talk about 2020 and where you guys were back in early 2020, about February or March, when COVID just started to become on the scene?
I don't know.
We were actually working at another functional medical clinic together when everything just kind of exploded. The good thing is that we weren't in the hospital where things were really bad. So we hear about a virus coming out, right? And I want to say like October, November, 2019. That's when we start hearing it. And our clients are really in tune with the news. So they are, you know, they're looking over in China and seeing things happen. So they're telling us, and it's unfolding, you know, they're shutting down the what is it called when you transportation systems going overseas and stuff. Yep. And so I think when you know, in March, we were just kind of like, is this really happening? For me, as an ER nurse for 10 years, it was the weirdest thing to shut down and close everything. That was the first thing they did, was close schools, if I remember correctly. And then, you know, I'm watching them put tape up and down the you know, aisles of the grocery store, and they're putting plastic things everywhere. And I'm thinking, this is the Twilight Zone. We have entered the Twilight Zone, because this is not the first novel virus that has ever come to our coast. But this is the first time that I have ever seen, and I don't know, probably you too, have ever seen in our careers, something handled this way, right? We know it's a virus. We know it's real. We know it's here, but why did we act the way that we did? That caused mass hysteria, which I think rattled everyone's nervous system. And that's why you see a big, you know, anxiety, mental health, you know, component to it. It's not just the way that it was handled. It's the collateral damage that it caused, you know, during this time, you know, and I remember just saying, you know, just wash your hands. You know, you only mask a fever and a cough. You don't mask everybody. You don't stop taking your vitamins. You don't shut down the gym. So I felt like I was kind of walking upstream and everybody's going this way. And I know Dr. Mueller felt, was in the same boat. I mean, we were at the same clinic, kind of dealing with the same thing.
Well,
So.
Dr. Mueller, just to interject, Karen, Dr. Mueller didn't have, you know, we saw flu seasons for many years, you know, as long as we've been living. And it seems like going back to 2020, the flu season in 2020 just disappeared. It never happened.
That's a great observation. Yes, I had been skeptical of flu numbers for many years, as I'm sure, you know, a lot of practitioners were, and that they're overreported flu deaths. And of course, and then suddenly, you know, as evidence to my point, in 2020 and 2021, all of a sudden flu deaths disappear. So essentially, we know what happened. If you've read enough, you realize that they just simply recategorized flu as another virus, and you know, or vice versa, depending on what they needed, on what was needed.
And then scared everyone out of their mind.
Well, listen, you know, as a person that went to college for political science, I did do my master's degree in education, but besides the point, you know, I'm a person that eats, sleeps, and drinks politics. So back in 2020, we got an election year. You know, we got President Trump, we got a Democratic primary, and it's hot and heavy. And I'm watching the news 24/7, 365. Then all of a sudden the COVID screens come on. We got the red, saying death counts and scaring the bejesus out of everybody. And that was the big problem, was that people, a lot of people didn't trust the news, but a lot of people didn't think that the news was going to steer us in some kind of direction where it was that crazy and it lied a lot. So
Well, I think
let's,
part of the, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't
no,
mean-
go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I think that's part of like the phenomenon, just sitting around thinking, closing schools for a virus, like what kind of thing is this? And then actually knowing the truth. So my biggest thing is I knew the truth. I knew my colleagues that were still in the emergency room. I knew the doctors that I used to work with. And I would text them and say, what's going on in the ER right now, in the heat of it all, when they're saying they're overwhelmed in the ER. Well, they were not overwhelmed in the ER. They weren't. I'm telling you that because it's true. And I have text messages and videos to prove that they weren't, they weren't overwhelmed with deaths.
Well, they were so
There
overwhelmed
weren't
in
bodies
the
in the
ERs.
freezer. They lied to the point that people were literally scared and they believed it. And that's why they acted, they did what they thought they had to do. They were terrified.
Karen, they were so overwhelmed in the ER that they were doing TikTok dances
Thank
in
you.
every state
That's
in the
exactly
country.
what I'm referring to. I saw one of my, where I used to work, one of the, groups of nurses, they were doing the scene from the Titanic, with the background with her on the boat, only it's a stretcher and everybody in the department is on the stretcher in the heat of it all. And it's on Facebook. I've got my buddy out in New York where the hot spot was, and he's making buku money because he's a travel nurse. And he's out there filming the feast that's coming from the neighborhoods because of all the heroes that are inside. And I'm not saying there were not heroes during that time. I'm not taking away the fact that there were nurses that were in some hard units, but people know what they know. And it wasn't like the media was projecting, in real life, at least not here in Florida.
Do you feel like we
just
lost the
wasn't.
That's right,
Hippocratic? No, I was just going to interject and say, do you feel like we lost the Hippocratic oath now with these doctors? And, we talked about this off the air that I had an injury from the jab. And when I first went into the hospital, I'll say it, Orlando Health. And I went in there from April of 2021 to August of 2021, 5 times with chest pains, very anxious, had pain in my arm, pain in my trap muscle, vertigo consistently all day. Where as a person that was an athlete throughout my life and worked out throughout my life, when I would go outside in Florida, and that's where I'm at, and do yard work, I would drop right to the ground because of dizziness. And when I told this to the nurses and the doctors in Orlando Health during that time, they told me that you're just depressed, you have anxiety, you should take benzodiazepines, you should take Zoloft, and and the list goes on and on. And again, I heard this not just with me, with many other people. So it seemed like the doctors right now, for the most part, besides people maybe that are functional, they don't look at the person in a whole body aspect. They don't say, are you sleeping well? Are you working out? What are you eating? What's your stress level? They just push to give you any kind of medication they can because they get the kickbacks, just like they got the kickbacks from the remdesivir, from the ventilators, the hospitals, the doctors were getting the kickbacks for giving people the jabs. This is all out in the open right now. There are letters about this stuff, and it's really disgusting to the point that I don't trust any of these doctors anymore. And it's very hard to find a doctor in general that is trustworthy right now. It's really disgusting. And people that trust the person with the white coat now, I think they're psycho. I'm sorry.
Well, let's think about it. We know that the vaccine causes harm. It's no question. It's out in the open. I mean, they've called Fauci out on it. We have data. There's enough research now going on nearly almost 4 years now. So we know that it's harmful. So for a doctor to continuously push, you need the vaccine, why would you trust them? You ask about the Hippocratic oath, we're to do no harm. You know, that's the first thing that we're supposed to do, no matter what, you know? No matter if we're gonna lose our job over it, if it's gonna harm somebody, I'm not to do it, you know? That's my moral oath, that's my ethical code, that's my code, it's my ethical, you know, code as well, not just for my career. So I see that, and I have seen that, and I continue to see it go out the window. You know, big head above administrators that know that this is bad, and they continue to just go with the flow. You know, so when you ask, was the Hippocratic Oath thrown out the window? Absolutely. And I think it was half and half. I think half of us were like, absolutely not. Like, I'm way on the side of, that's ridiculous. We've never had handled any kind of novel flu like this ever. So why would we do it now? You know, there must be, I'm just going to say there must be an agenda. There must be a reason to do so, right? And then you've got the doctors who I've known for a long time that are saying, this is good for you. Clearly it's not. And I just want to shake them and be like, are you serious? Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, at this point, I mean, in the beginning, you know, there's a lot of gray area, there's a lot of skepticism, and because obviously there was a ton of information coming at us like a tsunami, and it was impossible to decipher all of it accurately. But as we eventually people started to dive down and dive in and write books like John Baldwin, who wrote The Real CDC.
Yes.
Yeah, and you know, come to find out that there was
Oh, we lost connection.
Mine?
All right, now we're back in
Are we
business, I
back?
think.
okay.
All right, so you spoke about John Baldwin. We've had him on the program a couple of times. Great guy from Massachusetts, doing a lot of great work.
Yeah.
But go ahead, continue, Doc.
Well, that was it. Just basically that he did some amazing work, some seminal work in identifying that there, you know, the what he called what was the term he used? But anyway, for externalities. That was it. That was the one I hadn't heard before. Externality. I mean, external factors introduced into a system, quote unquote, you know, because he's an engineer, he understands systems, that resulted in a huge number of excess deaths from various causes. And when you group them together, there were a lot of excess deaths from people who did get, you know, remdesivir, for instance. So that was something. But the problem was that he notified medical legal authorities in his state, and that put them on notice and gave them a legal duty to act. That there were serious, you know, felony level crimes being committed, but they had the opportunity to correct them, to correct the false information, and they haven't done that. And so they're supposedly guilty. You know, there are a lot of folks that are guilty of felonies, probably all over the country,
Right.
Based on that. But I guess I don't want to go off in the weeds.
No, we do have to say, for people listening, the CDC does say that the vaccine is safe and effective. And go and get your 9th booster shot, or 10th, or 12th, whatever it may be. It's totally up to you. But we do have to say, again, the CDC does say that the vaccine is safe and effective. We will keep going, keep going into this topic. And, you know, just because you brought up John Baldwin, you know, Ed Dowd, we interviewed him on the program too. He did put out a book about the excess death crisis in our country. And he deals with, you know, he's a guy that used to work for BlackRock, and he's really dove deep into this topic. I do want to get into this too with both of you guys, because I think this is very beneficial for people to hear about, as far as what's going on with medical institutions. Now, I just told you personally, I don't trust anybody with a white coat now. And for the most part, I'm going as far as medical professionals, going towards more of the functional side, because at least those people look at you as far as your whole body. They don't just look at and say, okay, you're sick today, take a Tylenol, take this pill, take that pill. Are you seeing more people that come to your clinic that are more interested in, you know, obviously hearing the functional aspect than hearing the regular old doctor that's just going to give you a pill and tell you to go take a nap.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know if, I mean.
Yeah, so I was,
Russ,
it's kind of a double-edged sword. So yes, I see the push towards more functional approach, so that's what we do, but unfortunately, they, most functional approaches and a lot of the treatments, in fact, almost all outside of like imaging, lab work, stuff like that is not covered by insurance. So
Right.
that's how they kind of stop the functional, right? It's good medicine, it's root cause medicine. I'm sure everybody's talking about it. It's, kind of been something that I think has been highlighted since, COVID. It's all about boosting your immune system and your supplements and, make sure you're proper hygiene and all of the things that you would ordinarily do that we've known for decades. However, to make it more accessible, like that's one of the things that Mercy Medical is looking at, just as a clinic and as, Dr. Mueller and I as clinicians, how can we make this accessible to everyone that needs it? That's been the goal from the beginning. We do have, so you've probably been introduced to cold laser therapy by Dan the Messenger. I think that's his podcast. He's, kind of introduced us to not only him, but also it's on the FLCC protocol, the photobiomodulation therapy. So not only is he doing it for his charity at the Hope House, we also have one here. So that is an example of how we're going to extend, the care, because that is how we put out the fire for the systemic inflammation that, is synonymous with long COVID or long vax.
So you asked about kind of like how the integrative medicine and how that integrates with our system, with what we're doing here and long COVID and so on. And I just got a lot of ideas just started popcorning in my head here a little bit. But our whole philosophy, Karen and I go back about what, six years or more, has always been integrative, natural, holistic. I use this in different terms, but I like integrative the best, because we don't just use natural medicine per se. We use the best of what allopathic medicine, with conventional medicine that we're licensed under, and in the integrative side or the nutritional side. So we've been doing that for a long time. So the beauty of treating long COVID and vax injured is that we didn't need to really look very far for our answers. They're the same answers we've been looking to for years, right? Simple things: sunshine, vitamin D, get out and exercise, stay hydrated, and reduce your stress. Those are some of the cardinal things that we tell people. But then we turned a little further and we found things like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine extremely controversial. But I can tell you for a fact that neither Karen and I have ever been swayed in the medical arena by something that was controversial. If we thought it was best for our patients, we're going to do it, and we did. We against a lot of
yeah, it felt like we were very underground there for right when 2020, and we're like, ooh, how are we going to treat these people and keep it quiet? And how are we going to get ivermectin? So we actually found some sources to be able to provide this, because at one time they told us that we couldn't prescribe hydroxychloroquine if we weren't,
right.
I think an immunologist. I mean, they limited to certain, scopes of practice. And then, they poo-pooed ivermectin to the point where, it wasn't true, but, we kept that going as much as we could. Just, that's integrative.
And so we just turned, when I learned about hydroxychloroquine, I started to use it right away. I never had, I think I paused for about a half a second. I'd heard about it as a young medical student, resident, and I heard that it could cause some eye problems. And, I was always skeptical of medicines. But when I really looked into hydroxychloroquine and found out it's on the World Health Organization list of top 10 meds, whatever, it's one of the safest drugs ever prescribed about a zillion times, I said, well, this is ridiculous. And I immediately started prescribing it. Same thing with ivermectin. And then I found the FLCCC site, Frontline COVID Critical Care Alliance, and started to follow them, because they're probably, amongst one of three top groups in the country that's credible, has an enormously credible science and medicine and people running it. So
we do have to say this for people listening, that ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are both off patent. which means they're not money makers. The vax is a money maker, and that's why there was pushing towards the vax and not towards hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. It's all a money game, and it's a big game, and you and I are not in it. And that's the way the cookie crumbles in America. I want to get into this as far as long COVID and long vax go, because it does seem like they're very similar for the most part. And it's very hard for people to tell the difference as far as them apart, unless, obviously, if you had an issue right after the vax, or if you had an issue very close to the vax, then obviously, it's the vax. But can you guys go a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah, I mean, we see everything from chronic headaches or vertigo, as you mentioned, to, I mean, full-on systemic heart failure. We've had in the same patient, heart failure patient, that was on an external pacemaker when he arrived, and he actually just called today and said that his repeat echo is normal. Is he
Wow,
up 45? So he's off the transplant list and he's thriving, but he was one of our patient zeros, I call him. Like, we really kind of fine-tuned what we believe to be one of the best long COVID protocols, using some of the FLCCC, and then some of the things that we've seen, kind of combining them and also gearing them towards what's going on with the patient. For him, it was cardiac and kidney. We have one that's got gastritis from mouth to rear, and that was a pretty critical situation, that one. So, it really is the whole gambit from, we've got leg twitching, anxiety, depression, and it's not a normal anxiety. That's what they say. I've had anxiety before. This is not normal. This is a buzzing in my body. This is, something different. Like, they're feeling it differently, from hair loss to definite weight loss, muscle wasting. In the older population, we're seeing a lot of memory problems, early onset dementia, Alzheimer's. What else you got?
Yeah, early onset dementia.
Autoimmune disorders.
Autoimmune is crazy. But either, I say dementia, I won't call it Alzheimer's again. We don't know for sure. But it's Alzheimer's like. We're seeing, I would say it's a tsunami of dementia. No matter what else people have, they have a focus problem, and it comes across as dementia anyway. So
memory recall, trying to come up with the words that are coming out of their mouth. I even have, I got to treat myself. There's, when you're around people that have had the vaccine, the shedding, when you have people that have long vax, or when you're around people, even with COVID, you're going to have, I feel like, every now and then we have to treat ourselves too, because I'll get to a point where I'm like, what am I trying to say, Dr. Miller? I don't know.
Probably more than every now and then. No, we realized early on that there was some kind of phenomenon, and we say it's, we believe in the shedding phenomenon going on is probably more extensive than we even knew, because, and first thing you think of as a clinician, you go, well, let me just think about the placebo effect. It's pretty powerful. But these things kept happening, not just to one person or two people, but to a lot of people all the time. And eventually you just couldn't ignore it any longer. That when we're around really sick people for some period of time afterwards, minutes or hours, maybe even days sometimes, we would get sick. And I would be like, my memory and my focus would get worse. And I go, wow. And it was powerful. It was, So
listen, I was there, Doc, about the memory. Back in 2021, after my second jab, I would be talking, my comprehension level was 0. I would talk, I couldn't get my thoughts out. It would just be a lot of gibberish, and I would just start swearing because I just couldn't express myself. It was really incredible. And thank God, like through taking some supplements, curcumin, also, and I can't think of the name of the supplement, but lion's mane, excuse me. That's what it was. And my memory has gotten a lot better. And also my comprehension skills and the words are coming out better than obviously were back in 2021. It's still not 100%, but it's very close to where I was. Regardless of that, I'm hearing a lot of issues of people with neurological issues. I know we did talk about the autoimmune issues, and I even have an autoimmune issue, which I never knew about before, but apparently it's on the block now because of what happened back in 2021. Regardless of that, can you talk about the neurological issues? Because that's what I hear the most is the
Yeah,
heart.
I think there's a bunch of different things happening. I think when
Sure.
you take a whole, not just one area of the world, you take the whole world. Okay, you've got everyone on lockdown. That's enough for anybody that's not medical, that has no knowledge of what viruses actually do as they spread, to terrify them. So now that's blow number one to their nervous system. Okay, it's trauma. So now we've traumatized them and they're scared, and now we vaccinate them, and or they get COVID itself, and now they've had a physical trauma. So now we've engaged parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system, and now we've just, like a perfect storm, now you're in fight or flight. When the body is in fight or flight, it is neurologically frozen, and I gotta run from that tiger anytime, stranded on a desert island. So now we've got hormonal imbalances. I know you've heard about that. They are definitely real. I mean, it's like it just drains it. But we've engaged the adrenals, our survival organs, and now it's draining all of the vital nutrients that we need to make these hormones that we need for survival. And now we've got an immune system that doesn't know what to do. So it's not just neurological, it's more than that. A lot of times it is gut breakdown, or it is just PTSD, let's call it that, and then it turns into other symptoms as it goes along, or it's even neurological, that it's affecting muscle. So like the patient that has the twitching that's just out of control, we've limited it, we've got it all the way down to just the calves. So if we can just fix those, then he's going to be another one of our, success stories, one of the many, but there's some complicated cases that we have to just diligently work on. But the ones that have the neurological problems probably are the most complex. So they take a little bit longer.
And the thing is that I think a lot of this is also, and when all of it, for that matter, spike protein induced disease. And as we know, the brain, or the spike protein can pass the blood-brain barrier, and it can be found in large amounts in the brain. So, and it has enormous amount of toxicity that it does, that's not even all been categorized yet. So it's damaging the brain, damaging the nervous system, damaging the muscles directly, because they're finding spike protein, of course, in the heart and skeletal muscle. So I think that plus, again, the stress on the system, the hormonal imbalance, the attack on the hypothalamus and so on in the brain, it all leads to neuropathy, muscle twitching, muscle damage, muscle pain. I mean, there's a gamut. We've actually come across probably 150 symptoms that are associated with these two entities we're talking about. Is unbelievable.
And not to mention that the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, the one that's going around and fixing everything that's broken, there's a total dysfunction there. So, it's so downregulated that it's not able to repair as fast as it needs to. So then now we're seeing, a decline if we don't get a hold of that. And that's part of what's putting the body in fight or flight. When God forbid you're, hit by a car, you're going into fight or flight, you're bleeding to death. So your body is going to give it all of it's got to pump blood to those vital organs until it can't anymore. You're in a state of fight or flight. And we're all in what I call walking fight or flight. We're all walking around, not knowing what's wrong with us. Many people don't even want to admit that they got vaccinated for one reason or other. Some of them don't want to even make the connection that, oh, this was after my COVID infection,
Right.
or this was after I got a vaccine of some sort, right? So we kind of have to, let's get a timeline, because there's no judgment here. We were all a part of this, and now we just want to take it and try to help as many people as we can, get them out of this fight or flight disaster zone.
Yeah,
you know?
listen, I know people in my immediate family. I know people that are friends of mine, older friends, we'll just say, down in Florida, and they're struggling right now. They got pains here, pains there. They didn't have this many pains before. And
Really
if you bring
pain,
up the vaccine,
aging.
right,
I
the
see
aging too.
people that I've seen 3 years ago and they look like they've aged 10 years. Have you noticed that?
That's-
Even
yep.
even patients of mine that I've known for a long time, they're like, I don't know what happened. I got that vaccine. All of a sudden I feel like I'm an old man or whatever. And I'm like, well, you look like it too. Like what happened? You know, and that's an example of it's rapidly without
Progressive,
the
yeah.
ability for the cell to repair itself, which is the way that God made us, right? You're going to be aging more rapidly too. So all of these, if you're genetically predisposed, we're also seeing this too. Like say you've got a family history of heart conditions, but you've done well to try to keep yourself healthy. So it's never really expressed itself. Well, now you got a bad case of COVID. Now you've got heart failure. That's essentially what happened to one of our probably most severe clients that we had.
Wow.
But it's just a kind of a number of things. It's all happening at one time, that's.
And the answers are, here's the thing, there are people, there are clinics that have been set up, right, by Mayo, by, other elite institutions all over the country to treat this, right, long COVID and so on. I hear from patients and other caregivers and doctors that they're not doing a very good job. These folks are not getting better. They're not
Well,
addressing the underlying problem.
listen, I got to interject here. I have a story about that. I told you I'm from Rhode Island originally. I went up to Brown University, one of the elite Ivy League institutions in our country, and they had a long haul COVID clinic. I went in there. I had a good friend. I interviewed him many times. He's on Wall Street working there. I told him, I said, listen, I'm going to go in there and talk about my vaccine injury. He said, don't do it. Say long COVID. Don't bring up. I said, no, I don't believe in lying. I'm going to tell the truth. I went in there, told the truth, said this happened 2 weeks after I got my second vaccine shot. Everything went haywire. Still hasn't came back. Early 2022, the doctor there that was supposed to be a long haul COVID doctor, infectious disease doctor at Brown University, told me that it's just going to go away. It'll eventually go away. And I said, how is that supposed to help me now? She said, well, just go and work out and just get some bed rest and you'll be fine in a couple of weeks to a couple of months. And that was it. So that's what you're saying, Dr. Mueller, is 100% correct, because this is Brown University, a medical institution, one of the top schools in the country. And that's what they told me personally, not an exaggeration, 100% truth. Go ahead.
So I'll tell you what, I'm sorry, were you in your?
Oh, I just want to say that. So just really quick to wrap that up. The beauty of what we do is we do holistic and natural things. We've always done them. That's our expertise. And we had to kind of expand our vision a little bit when COVID started and taken a lot of different therapies and evaluate them. But now over the last couple of years, I think we've got it down to a pretty good science in terms of we have some outstanding nutritional IVs that we can tweak to the different patients and customize them. We have the photobiomodulation or cold laser therapy, as Karen mentioned before. We have we can prescribe medication as necessary, ivermectin and so on. So there's a lot of things. We're doing brain mapping, neurofeedback, and a number of other things. So we're using frontline, really cutting edge stuff. And that's something else I just learned about was the use of a supplement to treat a receptor, a dangerous receptor that's overproduced in the body in this situation in long COVID called galectin-3. And it can be easily modified. And I believe my experience with it so far has actually been outstanding, and it may be something significant to add to the armamentarium of treating this long COVID. That really, really helps. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to go.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, and if one thing doesn't work for somebody, we do something different. And here's the other thing. This is not something that's had, at least on our side of the playing field, lots and lots of research. So we're constantly trying to kind of catch or get that moving target. Not everybody's the same. Think about all the variables that were thrown into the mix And then in the midst of the virus trying to spread, they threw how many different vaccines on it? So now you've just spun out of control all of the different variables that could possibly have taken place. So there's symptoms, there's like sets of symptoms, all the different conditions, they are not all the same. Now they're undertones, right? Nervous system, GI, heart. But some people, you know, they don't have this set of symptoms, but they have this one. So we have to like devise and cut and carve our plan to match what's really going on with them. And then the other part of that is, for the most part, when you treat a patient with XYZ, you know what's going to happen. With these patients, we had one, well, we have had before patients that actually have what's called a Hertz reaction. So we actually treat them with some of our IV therapies, cold laser therapy, and they actually have a reaction because of the toxins that are coming out of the cells, you know, and these may even be in there since before. And it's a very strange reaction, but here's the thing. If we're not here to continuously detox them, encouraging different things like the sauna, drinking lots and lots of water, different ways of detoxing them, they can end up hospitalized. And I guarantee nobody in the hospital is going to recognize that type of reaction.
Right.
It can look like acute psychosis. It can look like dementia. It can look like the flu. It can look like we stayed in bed for a week. It can look like vomiting. I mean, you just have to know what to look for, recognize what it is, and then we've got to treat that too. So it's constant moving target of things that we have to, be aware of. And I don't think you're going to get that in just
No.
They don't have the time to deal with the clients in a traditional setting when you're seeing somebody every 15 minutes. I've been there.
Right.
I'd
Yeah.
never go back because of that. I don't feel like that's really helping people.
But yeah, so in the end, and I think I hear Karen saying that we're treating the things, the underlying conditions, and I know she mentioned the inflammation and clotting, right? So those are two of the
that's
biggest
another big
things,
one.
huge things: inflammation, clotting, auto antibodies, autoimmune disease. But if we, it doesn't have to be that complicated. As long as you have things, say for instance, the herb curcumin, right, from turmeric. Amazingly effective at reducing inflammation with virtually zero side effects, and it has lots of other effects as well, including killing cancer. So things like that they're so simple to use. It allows Karen and I to sleep well at night because we can recommend that and not worry that someone's going to have an overdose on some dangerous drug. Again, all the other things, virtually, probably 90% of the things for long COVID are natural, over the counter.
Safer than Tylenol.
Yes. And Tylenol isn't even that safe to begin with.
Yeah.
But so
True.
right, and so it's beautiful because you can almost be, you almost don't have. I'd say this, you almost don't have to be a doctor. Just have to have common sense and access to some prescriptions, but and the intravenous stuff.
So just kind of to dive a little deep into this, because we did get an audience question about POTS, hearing that a lot. I don't know if you guys are seeing that.
yeah.
I'm sure you are.
We do. That goes along with what I was talking about. That's a neurological problem,
Yeah.
but it is also, kind of categorized as a cardiac condition.
Yeah.
But that's really a fight or flight response to something that's happened. And now the nervous system is kind of creating irritation in the heart. So it kind of beats very rapidly from different positions, right? We do have a client, actually, I saw her today. She's got a number of those conditions, POTS being one of them. And she's doing fantastic, but she's also doing everything we ask her to do. So that's the other thing. How far do you want to go and how much are you going to do
Right.
in terms of the treatment plan? Because again, they're not cheap. They're not covered by insurance, many of them, and that's super unfortunate. But one of our goals and part of Dan's charity was to help provide cost to people, because we believe that the treatment is more important than the cost, but obviously we have to have money to keep the lights on, right? So it's not like, we can't have some cost afforded to it, but that's one of the reasons people don't want to be compliant with it,
Yeah.
with the treatment plan.
But you are seeing other patients besides the long COVID, long vax, correct?
I would say that, yes, we absolutely do. But I'll tell you that when you start interviewing your clients and you start listening to their timeline, unless they were a client before 2020, you kind of hear the same things, and whether they want to admit that it might be long COVID or not, they might have it, how they might have symptoms and not know it, right? But I'm going to treat it anyway. I'm just not going to call it anything, I'm going to say, well, let's boost your immune system, and then I'm going to recommend whatever we need to based on whatever that scenario is. But I would say that the majority of patients do have some long haul symptoms, even if they're mild.
Karen, do you feel like the issue is with people coming to about having long COVID or long vax is that, especially I should say for long vax, is that they put this substance in their body, it hurt them, they don't want to admit that they freely did it to themselves, and that's why a lot of people don't want to come to admit. Like me, it happened, I can't do anything about it. I'm willing, able, and will say it 150 million times that I did this to myself. It's unfortunate. I'm trying my best to get better and putting in the work. And I have gotten better since 2021. I'm not 100%, but a lot of people don't want to say that they did it to themselves.
Right. And so the thing is, that is very true. They've realized now, oh my gosh, what have I done? I acted so, out of fear versus, trying to learn a little bit more. Right. But if we can say one thing, like all that aside, it doesn't matter why you got the vaccine. Some people got it because they couldn't see their grandbaby. Some people got it because they had to go to graduation and another, they had to go on a cruise, whatever it is, their company made them get it. There's no reason to be ashamed that you had the vaccine, but I think that there was a lot of political charge around it too. So people that are really Republican and they got a vaccine and they might be associated with something they don't want to be, or vice versa, whatever. Pastors of churches, I mean, that's always, right. I mean, where's your trust? I mean, that's where I'm at, so it's not a time to judge people. It's a time to come together. And if admitting that is going to, lead to some type of resolution, I'm not going to say cure, but, I tell people we're going to get you to a point where you're, at least it's tolerable, or better, but it won't get worse, so admitting that you had the vaccine it's not as important, the why that you got it as it is that knowing that if you have a symptom, time it out with your own vaccine, and don't be afraid to say, yeah, I got the vaccine. I want to know which one it was. Was it Pfizer? Was it Johnson & Johnson? Was it Moderna? Like, which one did you get? Because they each come with their own little set of incidentals, I'll call them,
which vary though from lot to lot as well. But
true.
Right. Very, very true. We'll end with these last few questions because we've had Dr. William Mackis on. He was with the Wellness Company over out in Canada. He's done a lot of work on turbo cancers. I know we got to teeter very carefully on the tightrope here about how we explain this. But are you worried about this? Because I do hear about a lot of young people, athletes, again, basketball, football, soccer, running, drop, or they have cancer all of a sudden. They're 20 years old, 30 years old, stage 3, stage 4.
Right.
And it just comes out of nowhere. I think we all are in agreement, and people listening probably know where we're all coming from on this, where that probably comes from. We don't have to get into that. But regardless of that point, are you hearing and seeing about this? Are you worried about this?
Absolutely.
Talk to the people about it.
They've done enough study to know that people that have received the vax may have some issues with the immune system afterwards. And they've identified the areas of the immune system that may actually be affected that deal with cancer. One of them is P53. It's our guardian of the genome, and if it protects cells from cancer. So anyway, they know about these things. They've studied them. They have a pretty good idea about how it may affect various parts of the immune system. And yes, indeed, one of the first things we started seeing was, in fact, it was one of my relatives developed, I believe it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, very rapidly progressive, stage 4, went from being totally healthy, athletic guy to yeah, stage 4. And thank God he made it through a very, very difficult couple of years, bone marrow transplant as well. But he was the first example, and that's the first thing I thought of was turbo cancer.
Our buddy, Bobby, he had, remember that?
Oh,
aggressive
that's right.
one?
That's
Yeah.
right. He was.
We've actually seen it. Some of our close personal
Wow.
relatives, some of our colleagues,
Yeah.
clients, relatives of them. So yes, it's a very real concern. But the key is shut off the fight or flight. Okay, so that's been compared to HIV and AIDS. The immune disorder that it's causing. In some cases, I don't know if I can say it. Can I say AIDS with a V? They've
AIDS.
Yeah.
coined that
We know.
term. But that's how severe the attack on the immune system, and that when you don't have an immune system, that's where cancer can grow wild too. So it's like seriously, it's the perfect storm. No vitamins, no nutrients, no energy, not taking food in, no immune system, have a disposition for cancers that run in the family.
It's the best example of people have always said, well, is it the cancer or is it the person? I call the person's body and their physiology and their nutritional status the terrain, the biological terrain.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it's the same thing. It's the biological terrain. I think that really determines a lot of this. And the strength of the immune system is the main thing there. And unfortunately, that is one of the main things that's affected.
I'll tell you, Dr. Mueller, I had a good family friend. He's in his 70s, wife obviously in his 70s, going back to 2021. A few months after the vaccine, she went into the hospital. Same kind of story as your friend, your family member rather there, a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She beat it. And the doctor at Celebration Hospital told her, said, we're hearing a lot of things about the jab. Did you get the jab? And she said, yes, I got 2. And they said, okay. They said, well, we recommend you don't get any more. And I couldn't believe this when I heard this back in 2022. But the doctor said, we recommend you don't get any more jabs because we believe this was put on by the jab. And she said, okay, she stopped, and her husband ended up getting the jab right after. But hey, some people are not too smart, but that's par for the course. But I want to get into this because it seems like when you're treating people, Karen, a lot of people are getting resolved to a point where, again, they're not 100% healed. Maybe some are, maybe some are not, but they are healed enough to they can function. So we are seeing a lot of people, their symptoms resolving, and also, is it more younger people, older people, men, women? Is there a difference?
So I don't think it really matters, and I'm seeing something too that Dr. Mueller, you called it the new workman's comp. So what's happening is, there's this thing where there's this newfound attention of having, being one of the first, several hundred people to have backs injured, and they're involved politically and they're speaking events, and they're kind of attached to their symptoms now, because without them they would not have a platform, right? So while I see some things getting better, sometimes behind the scenes I'm seeing, well, they just, and it's nothing, I'm not trying to say anything negative about them, but in their mind it's almost like they've been brainwashed, to believe that they're sick and they're always going to be sick. And so we know that when you say I'm sick, I'm always going to be sick, I'm this, I'm that, you're actually kind of reporting your future, Power is in the tongue, right? It says that in the Bible. So I do teach our patients that when they come in, like, I'm no better than before. You know, I have to say, what do you mean you're no better than before? You having chest pain? No. Well, then you're better than before. So what I want to hear you say is, I'm doing better today than I was yesterday. I'm in a phase in progress of healing. So you've got to be like, their mind has to be in it. That's the problem. Some people don't, they say they want to get well. You give them all the things to do, but they don't do half of it and they only get half the results, and then they come back and they're not well. So they can still tweet about it and write about it on their blogs, and and they're getting a momentum here. So that, I would say, is one of the biggest things, because I can confidently say that we've treated enough patients, and I've seen enough results to just today. Like I said, he came with a life pack on. He called me today. He came in November of last year. He spent about 2 months with us and did everything we asked him to do. And he had his repeat echo today. His cardiac function was at 10, which is transplant. He got a pacemaker in the interim, and today it's normal. So when I tell you that I've seen miracles happen, nothing short of miracles, it can happen, but you got to be all in,
That's a good point. We've seen a lot of people, virtually everybody has gotten better. Virtually everybody.
Right.
And significantly better, and better as a result of the therapies, not necessarily because of just time that goes by. So, however, they have to be, as Karen said, invested and engaged in their therapy, just like anything else. If you don't take an antibiotic for an infection, it's probably not going to go away. So they have to be really involved and engaged. And there obviously are cost considerations. There's these people have chronic fatigue almost across the board, so it's difficult to drag their butt out of bed every day, literally. So we have to keep those things in mind. But we provide an enormous amount of support, spiritual support, emotional support, and every other way. I think we're a very unique clinic. It's very unique. That you won't find a faith-based type of approach that has so much to offer anywhere in the country.
Well, listen, I agree with you, because even myself, I do all these interviews with all these big name doctors, asking the questions. Everybody's saying some of the same stuff, some different. And you start to go down this rabbit hole, as you said, Karen, where sometimes you just feel like this is your life and you're never going to get fully better. I've been there. And sometimes you struggle with it from time to time. I'm grateful that I'm not as bad as some people, where I still can work out. I do have issues with the vertigo pretty constantly, but I'm still working out and trying the best I can to be better and learn information from people like you, always trying to get my nutrition in shape. The list goes on and on. But I do see where that is. And I know probably some of the people that you're even talking to, because it is, they are advocates. I'm grateful that they are, but it is, probably detrimental to their mental and physical health, of course.
It's not their fault either.
Yeah.
It's literally not their fault. I mean, they were truly injured. These people are truly injured. They are truly having medical problems, but the medical problems are on the decline because they are not getting the treatment that they need, and maybe not in the right mental space, or maybe, like you said, they're struggling to believe that there is hope, or that they can get all the way better, or at least to where they've got some, quality of life,
But I think it is about faith, Karen, too, because
absolutely,
I always believed in Christ, of course, but when this happened, my relationship with Christ was not that great. I mean, it was mediocre. And I tell this story all the time, and I'll tell you guys this, and people listening probably heard this story multiple times, but the day that I got my first vaccination, I had these thoughts in my head: don't do this. This doesn't seem right. And I actually called a couple people and said, I keep having these thoughts. I thought I was losing my mind, honestly. And obviously I got the first vaccination. I was fine, except I had a little bit of dizziness throughout the time until the next vaccination. The second vaccination, I had those same thoughts came back, the same anxiety about don't do this. This doesn't seem right. Call people up. You got to do it for your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your cat, your dog, everybody in the world. And again, you end up doing it. And then what happened. I personally believe that was Christ telling me, don't do this. The Holy Spirit was trying to tell me, don't do this. I didn't see it at the time because my relationship with Christ was not there to recognize that. I see it now. It's too late, but it isn't too late to rebuild my relationship with Christ and also rebuild my relationship with health and wellness in general. So again, I have learned a lesson.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's put me through the ringer, but again, it has helped me learn a lot of things about myself, a lot of things politically about myself, emotionally, mentally, the list goes on and on. I want to get into, again, these last few questions, again, audience questions. I do thank you guys for being on, and I'm reading this off the computer screen here. When we talk about supplements, therapies, in general, because everybody and their brother, if you're in the medical freedom movement or have been injured by the jab, you hear from all kinds of different doctors. Everybody's got this, that supplement, that supplement. It's going to cure you. Give it a couple of months, you'll be cured. The list goes on and on. What supplements should people be looking into? Again, everybody is genetically different. We don't want to say it's a one size fits
So
all.
before Dr. Mueller goes into the supplements, I just want to caution everyone out there looking for the latest and greatest supplement that's going to cure COVID because it's a great marketing plan. I've looked at a lot of these, and a lot of the ingredients on the back are maybe a quarter to half strength of the doses that we use as an isolated supplement. So don't get caught up in a rabbit hole of somebody spewing out, this is the best thing for you, because I've looked at just about all of them and we're doing the same thing, but we're doing them in massive doses. They're doing them in the safest dose possible. And that's great and all because they don't want to harm anybody. And that's what supplement companies want to do. But that's also what makes us different as clinicians using therapeutic doses and even giving some of these things IV. So I just want to caution your audience that, you know, even though it says it's the magic COVID eraser, it's probably exactly what we're doing, but it's a blend, probably a proprietary blend. So you will never know exactly how much of what's what is in the bottle. And it's probably, it's probably helpful, but just don't get bamboozled. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that was good. Well, we have some amazing therapies that we offer, and one of the best ones is the customized intravenous therapy, where we use B complex, high doses of vitamin C, things like EDTA, which help improve circulation. There's a lot of things, antioxidants, and very specific and judicious use of those IVs can have a major impact on a person's healing. But the core of their nutritional program is always going to be diet and supplements. And I know, so your biggest interest in supplements. There's quite a few that have been pretty well vetted now based on published science. And I look at PubMed quite a bit, peer reviewed. And one of them, it always pops up first on the radar, is NAC, or N-acetylcysteine. It has direct anti-COVID properties. It synergizes with other things like zinc and bromelain in terms of killing or actually inhibiting or eradicating the spike protein, which again is always eradicating the spike protein, just kind of FYI, is always at the heart of what we're trying to do, because that's what's creating all this toxicity. So anyway, vitamin C is critical, multivitamins critical. There's something called omegas, natto, but my first one besides C maybe might be nattokinase or nattocerazine, which is a combination of two enzymes. That
even without heart issues,
doesn't matter. They found that they can pretty much safely say that anybody who has had the jab or had COVID probably has some spike protein residual in their heart for a long time. Might be months, might be years. And so they're saying that when they looked, they found it in virtually everybody. So you kind of have to assume that, unfortunately. Yeah, and there's more. I mean, there's things like CoQ10. If you have heart problems, especially if you have congestive heart failure of any type or damage, then CoQ10 is certainly indicated. So the thing is that there's no one size fits all. There's a base of things that we'll prescribe, and we just mentioned most of those. But then we'll start to take, like ivermectin. You can be over the counter or prescription. But there's quite a few different things that other immune boosters.
Various dosing. It's not cookie cutter.
Right.
I think a lot of the clinics that are helping people with long COVID and long vax, they have this cookie cutter list of for you to do, and they think, well, not if they think, it probably does help a lot of people, but there are always exceptions to the rule, right? So the list really does go on. I use some of the like charcoal detoxing, just something to detox the gut. That would be one of has to go on board. Probiotics is
extremely
huge.
important.
I think everybody underestimates their probiotics, and if you got it from Walgreens or another commercial pharmacy, it's probably sawdust. Throw it away. Just saying. You got to have a good probiotic. Is at the core, everything's coming from the gut.
Yeah.
Neurotransmitters, everything.
Last two questions on Florida politics. So obviously our Governor DeSantis, who I'm personally a fan of, has ran for president, talked a little bit about the vaccine injured, talked a little bit about other issues as far as mandates. He's put some laws in place, not as strong as I want him to be, but regardless of that, Joseph Ladapo's very much against the jab. He's come out and said it on many different programs, especially for young men and women. The list goes on and on, but what are you hearing from politicians, people in the medical field that maybe are in touch with politicians in Tallahassee or even in, around the Orlando area that maybe are against this? I know it's a very toxic topic because Big Pharma does have their hands in every politician's pocket.
I've been pretty politically active over the last few years, and including dealing with these direct issues, right? Bringing up the issue of the jab with county commissioners and so on. And I can tell you that there's a few people who still want to remain and hold others accountable and be accountable themselves, who are in positions of authority. But the vast majority of people, administrators, doctors, anybody in positions of authority, have run the other way as fast as possible. When you bring up COVID, they change the subject. They go, "Oh, that was like years ago. We're not dealing with that anymore." No, so honestly, that's what they say. They don't, and the reason is mens rea, guilty mind. These are people who administered the vaccines or the jab, and themselves oftentimes, or maybe were in some authoritative position to do so. And doctors, health departments, et cetera, nurses. And I feel bad for them because they're going to have to live with these things the rest of their life.
What about the politicians, though? Besides Governor DeSantis, who has made some noise but hasn't done a whole hell of a lot, and I love the governor. I'm a fan of his. And Ladapo was huge. I mean, he's really speaking out against this. The grand jury issue didn't really do anything at all. And they're still talking about it, but nothing's happening. Do you feel like this is kind of a whole charade?
I think it was some lip service. Just a superficial attempt to satisfy some people, and satisfy the population, and that something was being done, but that it didn't have enough teeth. That's my impression. Now it's still apparently going in some areas.
Well, in terms of like early on, I think getting the monoclonal antibodies was a big push. And I think DeSantis did a really good job at making sure that was on every corner and available until it wasn't. But I don't think that was within his control, right?
Right.
There's been a big push to take the vaccine off the shelf. Well, again, I don't think it's I don't think it's DeSantis's call to pull the vaccines from all of the shelves in Florida. I don't know who that call is, but maybe he could make a little more noise. But and he did do a good job keeping our schools open. And for me as a mom, my kids are in school and I'm like, everybody's going to school. I don't care what's going on. If they want you to wear a mask, throw it on your face, just get through the day, you know, but everything is baloney. I mean, I literally was honest with them, but at least they could go to school versus some kids didn't even get to graduate. Kids didn't get to walk across the stage. They didn't get to finish their senior year. They didn't get to do so many things that literally they're robbed of. So I do believe that, you know, DeSantis did a fairly good job in our state of keeping that ball rolling and mitigating as much as possible. You know, even in daycare, you know, the kids could see their teachers talking when they're having this in their developmental stages. There's a lot of states where kids are severely developmentally delayed, depending on the circumstance, because they weren't able to socialize, you know. So I think he did a good job in early on, you know.
Well, but in terms of, I think you asked about politicians, and you know, maybe you're trying to get at the fact that are we making any inroads with politicians in terms of developing, you know, legislation, policy, and procedure along these lines, whether it's at the state level or the federal level? And the answer is we've been working really hard on lots of those types of issues. Not a whole lot of that has gotten done or passed, especially in terms of COVID. So unfortunately, they're not. Again, the same with the politicians. You start talking to them, and they go, "Oh, COVID. Oh, yeah, that was years ago." They want to run the other way. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And so that's what I found when I started talking to folks, that it's really hard to get their interest back. That's a really important topic today.
Well, the only politicians I personally see on the federal level that are even talking about this is Thomas Massey of Kentucky, and also Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, who's been talking about the vax injuries for quite a long time. And, you know, he brought in Peter McCullough to testify in front of Congress, also brought in Robert Malone. But regardless of that, it's very much low on the totem pole. But again, there is a reckoning that hopefully will come down the road, because all these people are dying. And what is going to, I know they're saying obesity and global warming and all this other gobbledygook nonsense, but there's going to be coming a time that this is going to come out, and it's slowly trickling out.
It's excess deaths. I mean, and that's one of the terms that John Bowen used.
Right. And it's slowly trickling out, and I hope it gets out, because again, people like myself and many other injured people are hoping for this stuff to come out so there can be a day of reckoning. A lot of people,
almost criminal not letting it come out, because it's preventing people from getting help.
Yeah.
So, you know, my hope is in November, things are going to change.
And what happened to all that money that was the Biden administration put towards long COVID? I don't know if you guys remember this, going back to maybe 2022, I believe it was. They put millions to billions of dollars towards long COVID research. And I think what they came to was pushing Paxlovid now, which is a total joke, but anyways.
Yeah, so you have to give them kudos for doing research, but then a dark or you know, a negative for everything else, for what they did with it.
Yeah, it's totally sad. But anyways, we'll end there. But I do appreciate people listening. Again, Karen Kelly and Dr. Jeffrey Mueller. It is mercymedicalandwellness.org. Again, mercymedicalandwellness.org. How else can people help you guys out besides going to mercymedicalandwellness.org?
Well, just spreading the word, you know. Like I always tell our clients, like, word of mouth is really great. So if you come here, you get healed, go tell someone else where we're at. We try not to be very loud about what we're doing, for obvious reasons. So we just, like, honestly, I pray that God will bring to the doors, you know, what he wants us to do. And that, you know, I don't overly chase things, because I feel like we don't need to be doing that right now. You know, like you said, until it's out of the bag, you know, we just need to kind of on the down low, you know, let people know we're here, word of mouth.
Yeah, we have a beautiful faith-based clinic. We, as Karen said, we're we kind of low profile, but we would love any referrals. And I think basically we offer as wide a range of effective therapies for not just long COVID and so on, but everything. I mean, hormone replacement and just the whole gamut of family practice type conditions. Certainly we're happy to treat as we've done our whole careers. But we've probably had between us almost 40 years of clinical experience, and with a very heavy emphasis on treating people naturally, safely, and I've seen already over 25 years far more effectively. So anyway, we welcome.
1000%.
And
Well,
we thank you
again,
very much for having us on.
Yeah, I thank you guys for coming on mercymedicalandwellness.org. Thanks so much for your time, and hopefully come down there one day, get some
Yeah, you're just
video
in
and
celebration.
yeah,
on,
hop,
let us
skip, and
give
a
you a
jump
tour.
down there and catch you guys in person. But anyways, guys, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a COVID-19 vaccination, and here's why. This isn't about gimmicks or sentiment or what commercial I like. This is about facts. COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective. Millions of doses have already been given in the United States, and these vaccines have the most intensive safety monitoring in U.S. history. When you need more information, use a reliable source like the CDC website and get the facts.
While we would all love to leave COVID-19 behind, the virus is still here and making some people very sick, especially older adults. The new updated COVID-19 vaccine is the most effective way to give your body the ability to keep the COVID virus from causing you harm. That's why CDC recommends everyone 6 months and older get 1 dose of the updated COVID-19 vaccine ahead of the fall and winter season. This recommendation was based on extensive data and clinical trials. As a doctor, a mom, a wife, a daughter, and head of the CDC, I would not recommend anything to others that I wouldn't recommend for my own family. That's why my 9 and 11-year-old daughters, my husband, my parents, and I will all be rolling up our sleeves to get our updated COVID-19 vaccine. I encourage you to get your own updated COVID vaccine and make sure everyone in your family who's 6 months and older does so as well. Don't forget, it's also a good time to get your flu shot if you haven't already. Check vaccines.gov to find a location near you and get your vaccine. And if you have any questions about the vaccine, please talk to your doctor.